Did you know that the average American packs away a whopping 17 teaspoons of added sugar a day? That's definitely way above what your body needs. Today, we'll explore how ditching it can totally transform your health. Hello again and welcome to my YouTube channel, Dr. Hanz MD, where we 10x your success by optimizing your health. Sugar overload is a serious issue in America. It's linked to obesity, diabetes, and a whole host of other problems. But the good news is, taking control of your sugar intake can have incredible benefits. Let's watch what happens when a group of friends decides to quit sugar for 30 days.
If you've been watching for some time, you might have noticed that it's kinda hard to have the cleanest of diets when you're the host of a food channel. You're constantly devouring sour candies, super spicy sauces, fast food burgers, edible underwear, sometimes even edible trees. Even outside the realm of this show though, as a father of a 5-year-old, I am constantly surrounded by unhealthy eating decisions.
Healthy eating patterns should start as early as possible. At this age, if you're not careful as a parent, your child might be over-consuming sugar from sources that might come as a surprise for you, like bread or breakfast cereal.
Especially when it comes to sweets. It's something that I didn't really think about until recently, just how much sugar and artificial sweetener I'm consuming all the time.
This is a common problem for most Americans. On average, we use 17 teaspoons of sugar on a daily basis. The recommended daily intake for men is just 9 teaspoons. For women, it's just 6 teaspoons.
I'm at least getting to the age where I have to start looking after my own health. So since it's a new year, new me, I decided to cut out sugar for the last month. And since misery loves company, I'm not gonna be alone on this little adventure. Steph, our social media manager Kai, as well as our live producer Ash are tagging along and joining me in eliminating almost all the sugar from our diets to see what physical and mental changes occur when a bunch of sugar fiends like us leave their favorite vice behind.
This is great. Health experts suggest that people cut back on sugar, but many are hesitant to give up their sweet treats. If they can show positive outcomes in this video, more viewers will probably be willing to dive in. And this is a great service for the public if you think about it. Well, I can tell you now, if you've been dependent on high amounts of sugar daily for many years, you'll definitely have some sort of withdrawal.
We all know by now that our bodies need sugar to function, namely in the form of glucose. But at the same time, we hear reports about sugar being this evil thing that'll leave us with no teeth and a weak heart. So do our bodies need something that's so bad for us? Or is sugar not as evil as all the headlines make it out to be? Well, the answer lies somewhere in the middle. Now, pause right here. This is a very confusing topic because there's a lot of discussion about the best terms to use when it comes to talking about sugar. You've probably heard people refer to sugar in two groups, good sugars and bad sugars. And let me be totally clear about that. I'm not trying to assign any sort of moral value to the foods or sugars that you're consuming.
The terminology is interesting. Nutritionally speaking, consumption of any type of sugar should be closely monitored, particularly if you've already been diagnosed with diabetes or pre-diabetes. But if you're otherwise a healthy individual, sugar from natural sources like fruit are preferred over added sugars. Naturally occurring sugars have the benefit of other nutrients like fiber that slows down the absorption of other nutrients from your body. This prevents blood sugar spikes and crashes. Added sugar does not have that protective mechanism.
The sugars that you find in fruits, vegetables, and milk, those are known as good sugars. These sugars are in the cells of their respective foods, and so when you eat them, you're also taking in additional nutrients like fiber, which leads your body's blood sugar to not spike as intensely, instead absorbing the sugar slower. Obviously, though, this is keeping in mind that everything is always dealt with in moderation. If you start eating your body's weight in strawberries every day, it's not going to end well for you.
I know this line is said for comedic effect, but you will find that when you consume sugars from whole foods, you will not tend to eat as much. Again, the fiber in fruit will typically prevent you from overeating. You'll feel full and stop at perhaps a cup of sliced fruit. Just the same, this is a call for moderation. It is possible to go overboard even with healthy food. Let's continue watching.
All the other sugars though, like the ones that you find in donuts, syrups, even fruit juices, those are called free sugars. They're free because they're not inside the cells of the food that we eat, which is why fruit juice has sugar that isn't good for you. If you're confused, well, so were we at first. But essentially when you squeeze the juice out of a fruit, you're breaking the cell walls, releasing that sugar, but also losing all the other good nutrients that you would otherwise be ingesting. Not to mention it's also way easier to have more sugar in juice form than in a whole fruit. 200 milliliters of orange juice, or a little less than a cup, it's the same as 4 oranges. Now, you're unlikely to go off and eat 4 whole oranges in a row, but you can easily sit down and drink a cup of orange juice in one sitting. Not only in that sitting are you taking in more sugar, but it's hitting your bloodstream way faster, and that much free sugar can lead to a lot of detrimental effects over time, like heart disease or liver disease. So naturally, when it came to this experiment, we decided that whole fruits were fair game, but fruit juices, candies, cookies, sodas, and anything else with added sugars, totally off limits.
This is correct. You should beware of free sugars. Steer clear of added sugars from various sources. Aside from cakes, candies, and ice cream, they may also be lurking in bread, tomato sauce, and even baby food. Learn to read food labels.
The natural question to follow, though, is about the most unnatural thing that I put into my body, Diet Coke. I mean, it says right there on the nutritional label, no sugar or added sugars, but those artificial sweeteners inside of it actually get a similar response from the brain as regular sugars do.
I've discussed this in previous episodes. Artificial sweeteners, while designed to provide sweetness without adding calories, have raised some health concerns. Some potential dangers associated with them include increased appetite, weight gain, poorly regulated blood sugar levels, altered gut microbiome, and the list goes on and on. So you should steer clear of them.
Speaking of our bodies being dumb, we also realized that other simple carbohydrates like flour, rice, or rice flour, they also tend to act similarly in the body. This is because things like flour contain chains of simple sugars, which are really just glorified carbs. So when they're absorbed by our bodies, our blood sugar spikes in the exact same way, leading to the exact same reactions by our pancreas to release insulin to bring that blood sugar down. The reason this is a bad thing is because over time, our body can develop a resistance to its own insulin, which in turn can lead to things like type 2 diabetes.
Insulin is like the key that unlocks our body cells so that we can store glucose or blood sugar for later use. When we become insulin resistant, it means the cells are not able to store glucose. This leads to high blood sugar levels circulating in the body. Over time, this can lead to type 2 diabetes or pre-diabetes.
Friends, I feel compelled to say this right now because what we got ourselves into isn't exactly the brightest idea. It's what's known as a crash diet. And I can't say this enough, but please do not go taking these sorts of extreme diets on your own. Any significant change in what you're consuming on a regular basis is something that you should probably double check with a doctor or some other expert.
Before modifying your eating plan, you should consult with your doctor or other healthcare professional. This is particularly important if you've been diagnosed with a condition or illness or are taking medications.
Overall, despite some reservations, we were all excited to start the journey and see how long it would take us to start feeling withdrawal symptoms. And when I say withdrawal symptoms, that's exactly what they are, because our bodies do become addicted to sugar. It's not addictive in the same way as, say, like nicotine or other drugs, but over time, high sugar levels, like you get in the average American diet, can physically alter our brains and affect the levels of dopamine we're getting, making us crave more sugar. In other words, sugar literally changes our brain chemistry and turns us into zombies that crave less brains and more Skittles. Symptoms vary from person to person, but if you ever do want to cut out sugar, be prepared for things like anxiety, depressed mood, difficulty concentrating, fatigue, nausea, intense cravings, changes to your sleep pattern.
It's best to prepare yourself for these withdrawal symptoms. I recommend starting your sugar detox plan over the weekend. Have some unsweetened herbal tea ready. Maybe play mellow music in the background and have a good book in hand. Make the weekend a time for relaxation. It could take a few days to recover from these withdrawal symptoms, but if you hang in there, things will eventually turn for the better.
Good news was that our energy levels seemed to be coming back to normal. What really started to affect us though in week 2 was the foods that we could eat. It really seemed like 90% of our days were dedicated to planning out what we could make for our next meal so that it didn't taste like cardboard. I went from never really thinking about the food that I was going to have for the next meal to constantly thinking about it.
I suggest that you have a list of foods and recipes even before you begin your 30-day sugar-free adventure. Stock your fridge and your pantry with produce, herbs, and spices. And be sure to throw out all other sugar sources.
Despite all the homemade recipes and crafty solutions to keep us from starving to death, in week 3 we were suddenly faced with another obstacle. One that, to be honest, seemed insurmountable: eating out at restaurants. It's an inevitability for me and Steph, especially when we're on the road traveling for business, because you're not at home. You don't have the ability to cook incredibly specific sugar-free meals. Unfortunately, all of us had to travel in week 3, and man, we learned the hard way how hard a sugar-free diet is to maintain when you're not in the comfort of your house.
One of the best things to do while traveling or eating out is to order a salad with the dressing on the side. And instead of using the pre-packaged dressing, opt to squeeze some lemon or drizzle some vinegar over your salad. You can even pack a small container of olive oil before you leave your house. That way you can be sure that no sugar can get into your salad.
For all of us, the morale started to dip a bit when we realized just how hard it was going to be social throughout the experiment. Doing something like this, as restricting as the diet is, really started to bleed into more areas of our life than just the kitchen.
The social element of this is the complicating factor.
If you must eat out and socialize, research the menu online ahead of time. Surround yourself with people with the same goals as possible. Another option is to enjoy home-prepared meals with friends and family who share your goals. So this Saturday, it can be dinner at Aunt Shirley's. Next Sunday, it can be a pared-down grill night at your best friend's place.
Let me tell you, friends, there is nothing sweeter in the world than crossing a finish line, even if the lack of sugar did leave us with a bit of a one-track mind.
Donuts, 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 donuts.
Can you blame us? I mean, this episode just lasted a couple minutes, but this was a full month of all of our lives. We decided that as a final experiment to see just how much our bodies had acclimated to the change in sugar consumption, we'd stuff our faces with some donuts as a final reward. But honestly, despite all of us looking forward to the sweet relief of sweets, we came out on the other side of this with a brand new perspective. And that's the most fascinating part about this whole thing. Every single one of us came out of this feeling more informed and better equipped to take control of the things that we're consuming in our day-to-day lives. Sugar was such an intrinsic part of my daily life prior to this experiment, and it's something that I never really thought about. But now I find myself going to the grocery store and actively looking at the nutrition facts, analyzing the things that I'm putting in my cart and asking myself, is this actually something that I should be putting in my body?
A sugar fast, or any other fast for that matter, makes us more aware of our habits, behaviors, and patterns of consumption. It cultivates a mindful approach to eating. During this process, you become more attuned to your food choices and the reason behind them. By temporarily eliminating sugary foods, you might discover a renewed application for the natural flavor of whole foods. This heightened awareness often leads to healthier, long-term dietary choices benefiting your overall well-being. Successfully navigating a 30-day no-sugar challenge also builds resilience. This newfound empowerment extends beyond your taste bud. It encourages you to tackle other dietary and lifestyle adjustments, adding pep to your step and potentially increasing your quality of life. This is a relatable and helpful video to use as a resource for those looking to cut back on sugar. And just a couple of tips before we end. If you're new to this type of challenge, dip your toes in by beginning with a shorter duration, say 1 or 2 days over the weekend. Gradually increase the length as your body adjusts. This approach allows you to adapt to the dietary changes and makes the transition smoother. Over time, you'll likely surprise yourself by comfortably completing a full 30-day no sugar challenge. Consider undertaking this month-long no sugar fast with friends or family. Having a support system can be incredibly motivating. Encourage each other, swap healthy recipes, and hold yourselves accountable. We'd love to hear your thoughts about this video. Share your experiences and progress in the comments section below. And stay tuned for the next episode of Dr. Hanz, MD, where we 10x your success by optimizing your health.